Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. Jack Weston swirled the amber liquid in his glass, the clinking of the ice cubes, a rare comfort in an otherwise quiet office. The city outside was unusually still, the lights muted as though someone had turned down the brightness on the world. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the fading glow of the sunset. Cases like these calls about mysterious happenings, unexplained events were becoming all too common. But when the phone rang this time, something in his gut told him this was different. He stared at the phone for a moment, then picked it up. "Weston," he said, his voice gruff from years of chasing ghosts, both literal and figurative. The voice on the other end was rich, authoritative with a hint of fear behind the words. "Mr. Detective Weston, I presume. I need your help." Jack sighed. "You and every other crackpot in this city. What's your story?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone," the voice replied. "You'll pay double your usual rate." Jack raised an eyebrow. His usual rate was already exorbitant, meant to keep away the people who weren't serious. But money wasn't his only motivation. He was curious. "Fine. Come by the office tomorrow. We'll talk. I'll send a car to pick you up at 10 tonight." "I'm where," I said. His tone unyielding. "Hide the situation. Can't he wait?" Before Jack could protest, the line went dead. He looked at the receiver for a moment before placing it back in the cradle, feeling an uneasy twist in his gut. This was no ordinary case. At exactly 10 p.m. a sleek black car pulled up outside his building. Jack, dressed in his usual trench coat and diva, stepped outside, cigarette dangling from his lip. The driver, a tall man with an emotionless face, opened the door for him. Without a word, Jack got in, and the car moved smoothly through the city's shadowed street. The city was a reflection of itself at night, empty, haunting, as if it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Jack stared out the window, watching the distorted reflections in the glass. Something about the way the city looked tonight made him uneasy. The buildings seemed to shift, elongate, like they weren't quite anchored to reality. After what felt like an hour, but was likely only 20 minutes, the car pulled up in front of a grand old mansion on the outskirts of the city. Jack stepped out, his cigarette crushed under his heel, and looked up at the looming structure. It was out of place, like a relic from another time, sitting alone amidst the decaying industrial sprawl. The front door creaked open, and a man appeared, a tall, thin figure dressed in an immaculately tailored suit. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but they held a flicker of something else fierce. "Detective Weston," the man said, extending his hand. I am Nathaniel Ward. Thank you for coming." "Let us get this over with," Jack replied, brushing past him into the foyer. He could feel the air inside the house was thick, like it was holding on to secrets. "How you got me here now? Tell me what's going on." Nathaniel shut the door quietly behind him. I don't know how to explain it. "Detective, the city, it's changing. Things are happening that I can't explain. People disappearing, reappearing in strange places, reflections moving on their own. It's like the fabric of reality is slipping." Jack folded his arms, watching the man closely. He heard it all before: ghosts, demons, the paranormal. It was usually some trick, some way for people to hide their guilt or avoid facing the truth. But this felt different. "Show me," Jack said, his voice slow. Nathaniel nodded and led him deeper into the mansion. The hallways were lined with mirrors, their frames ornate and gilded, like the house had once belonged to someone with far more money than sense. Jack caught glimpses of himself as they walked, his reflection always just a half second behind his movement. They reached a room at the far end of the mansion, and Nathaniel stopped. "Tyler, this is where it all started." Jack stepped inside and immediately felt the shift in the air. The room was vast, but there were no windows, no light except for the flickering glow of candles set in the corner. Mirrors covered every inch of the walls, their surfaces slightly warped, like they were made of water instead of glass. As Jack moved further into the room, his reflection flickered. For a moment, he saw not just one version of himself, but dozens, hundreds, all standing at different angles, watching him. He blinked, and they were gone. "What the hell is this place?" Jack asked, his voice tight. Nathaniel hesitated. "It says a gateway. I don't understand it, but ever since I bought this house, I've just been drawn to this room. The mirrors they read, not just reflections, they show something else, another version of reality." Jack turned, slowly scanning the room. His instincts screamed at him to leave, but something, curiosity, maybe kept him rooted in place. He stepped closer to one of the mirrors and peered into it. His reflection stared back, but there was something wrong. It was subtle at first, a flicker in the corner of his eye. Then his reflection smiled. Jack didn't. The detective took a step back, his hand instinctively moving to his gun. There is some kind of trick, you screwing with me. I swear I am not, Nathaniel replied, his voice shaking. Try, it happens all the time. The reflections, they move on their own. They don't match what we do, and sometimes people disappear into that. Jack's hands clenched into a fist. What do you mean, disappear? Nathaniel swallowed hard. I had a servant, a maid. She went into one of the mirrors. I haven't seen her since. Jack shook his head, taking a step back from the mirrors. How I am not playing this game for whatever. Contrary running here. I am not falling for it. Before Nathaniel could respond, the room shifted. Jack blinked, and suddenly, the mirrors weren't just reflecting the room. They were reflecting different rooms, different versions of the mansion. In one mirror, the room was on fire. In another, it was flooded. In another, it was empty, abandoned, as though no one had lived there for decades. Jack stumbled back, the room spinning around him, his reflections continued to watch, their movements disjointed, wrong. He could feel something pulling at him, tugging him toward the mirror. Then, without warning, the floor beneath him gave way, and Jack fell. He awoke in darkness. For a moment, he thought he was dead, but as his senses returned, he realized he was lying on something cold and hard stone. He groaned, pushing himself to his feet, his head pounding like a drum. The room he was in was different. It was the same, yet different, like he had fallen into another version of the mansion. The mirrors were still there, but now they were broken, shattered, their shards scattered across the floor. The air felt heavier, thick with the weight of something ancient and malevolent. Jack stumbled forward, his mind racing. He had to get out of here. Jack. The voice came from behind him, soft and melodic. He spun around, his heart hammering in his chest. A woman stood there, her silhouette barely visible in the dim light. She was tall, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Who the hell are you? The woman smiled, a sad, knowing smile. Sir, I am Amara, and I've been waiting for you. Jack's hand tightened on the grip of his gun, but something about the woman's presence made him hesitate. Amara stood there calm, almost ethereal, her dark eyes fixed on him. The sadness in her smile deepened, and it unnerved him more than the shattered mirrors or the strange reality he found himself in. How do you know my name? Jack's voice was hoarse, the words catching in his throat. Amara took a step forward, the broken shards of glass crunching beneath her feet, yet her movements were smooth, deliberate. I've known you since the moment you entered this maze. You were bound to come here eventually. Jack's mind raced, still trying to make sense of his surroundings. Maze, what the hell are you talking about? Amara's gaze flickered toward the cracked mirrors around them. This place, it's not like the world you were used to. Think of it as a crossroads between reality. The city you knew, the one you walked through earlier, it's only one layer. There are many more, and you've fallen into them. Jack scoffed, trying to ground himself in his skepticism. How do you expect me to believe that this is some alternate reality? That's not how the world works, lady. Amara's expression softened, and for a moment, Jack thought he saw pity in her eye. Whether you believe it or not, doesn't matter. You are here now, and if you want to leave, you will need to trust me. Jack's instincts screamed at him to get out, to find a way back to the reality he knew. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that what Amara was saying wasn't. Completely insane. The city, the reflection, something had been wrong ever since he took this case. Why me? Jack asked, his voice quieter now. You were already close to the edge? Amara said, the mirror maze has a way of pulling in those who are teetering between worlds. You've seen things you don't truthfully understand, things you've just missed. But here in this place they manifest. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it becomes. Jack felt the weight of her words settle on his chest. He thought back to the strange reflections, the distorted city streets, the feeling that had gnawed at him for weeks now. Something had been off, but he had buried it beneath his logical mind, refusing to let it surface. Amara moved closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah, the longer you stay, the harder it is to leave. The maze doesn't let go easily, and if you don't solve the puzzle it presents you, you'll be trapped here forever. Jack's throat tightened. Amara's gaze grew distant, as if she were looking past him into something unseen. It's different for everyone. For you, it's all about accepting what you buried, what you refuse to face. Jack bristled, his defenses rising. You don't know me. Amara's sighs met his unflinching. Faye, I know enough. The maze knows too. Jack turned away from her, frustration boiling inside him. This was madness. He was a detective, not some pawn in a supernatural game. He wasn't about to let some haunted house get the better of him. He had to get out of here. I don't truly need your help, Jack muttered, stepping toward the nearest door. But as his hand reached for the handle, the door dissolved into the wall, leaving nothing but cold stone beneath his fingers. He cursed under his breath, spinning around to find that the room had shifted again. The walls now stretched farther than before, and the mirrors were gone, replaced by shadowed corridors stretching in every direction. Amara watched him calmly. The maze reacts to you. It changes based on your decisions. The harder you resist, the more it closes in. Jack swallowed hard, a feeling of dread creeping up his spine. He took a deep breath and forced himself to meet her gaze. All right, fine, let's say I believe you. What do I need to do? Amara tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. You need to confront what brought you here. The case you couldn't solve, the one that still haunts you. It's holding you back. Jack flinched, her words striking a nerve. He hadn't rethought about that case in months, not consciously at least. But now, standing in this twisted version of reality, it bubbled to the surface, refusing to be ignored. I don't truly see what that has to do with this, Jack said, his voice gruff. Amara stepped forward, her voice soft but insistent. The maze feeds on unresolved guilt, on secrets, buried deep. It's not just a place, it's a reflection of the mind. Until you face what's inside, you'll never find your way out. Jack's hands curled into fists. He had always prided himself on being able to separate his personal life from his work, on keeping his emotions locked away. But now in this place, it seemed like there was no escaping them. Amara's voice was gentle as she spoke again. Hi there, Sans, a reason you took this case, Jack. You knew something was wrong with the city even before you arrived here. It's all been calling to you, drawing you in, and now you're in the heart of it. Jack took a shaky breath, the weight of her words sinking in. What do I have to do? Amara's gaze softened, and she reached out, gently touching his arm. You have to find the source of the distortion, the heart of the maze. But be careful, it will show you things you're not ready to see, and if you're not careful, it could break you. Jack nodded, without still nod at him. He didn't trust easily, and there was no reason to trust this woman. But something in her eyes, something about the way she carried herself, made him believe that she wasn't lying. With a determined nod, Jack set his jaw. All right, lead the way. Amara gave him a small, sad smile, and without another word, she turned and began walking down one of the shadowed corridors. Jack followed her, his senses on high alert, every step feeling like it could be his last. The air grew colder as they moved deeper into the maze, the shadows lengthening the walls, warping and twisting around them. Jack tried to keep his focus, but his mind kept drifting back to that case, the one he had never solved. A missing girl, Sarah Dawson. She had vanished without a trace, and no matter how hard Jack had tried, he had never found her. It had been his first real failure, the case that had haunted him ever since. The further they walked, the more the maze seemed to react to his thoughts. The walls shifted, displaying flickers of Sarah's face, her wide eyes staring back at him from the darkness. Jack clenched his jaw, trying to push the memories away, but the maze wouldn't let him. You can run from it, Amara said softly, not looking back. Branny, you have to face it. Jack gritted his teeth. I am trying. The corridor opened up into a vast chamber, its ceiling impossibly high, the walls lined with broken mirrors. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate mirror, its surface smooth and pristine. Unlike the other, Jack's reflection stared back at him, but there was something different about it, something wrong. Amara stopped beside him, her voice low. This is the heart of the maze. Jack stepped forward, his eyes locked on the mirror. His reflection didn't move, didn't mimic his action. It stood there, still and silent, watching him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. And then the reflection smiled. Jack froze, his heart pounding in his chest. His reflection took a step forward, pressing its hand against the glass. Jack swallowed hard, his mouth dry. Dearie, what the hell is this? It's Allure whispered with the part of you've been trying to bury. The guilt, the fear, son, all here waiting for you to confront it. Jack's reflection began to speak, its voice eerily calm. Trace, you failed her. Jack shook his head, taking a step back. No, I did everything I could. You didn't tell. The reflection said, its smile widening. You let her slip through your fingers. You could have saved her, but you didn't type. Jack's hands trembled, his chest tightening with the weight of the words. Sad, that's right, not true. I tried everything. The reflection, eyes glowed with a cold light. Harry have been running from it ever since, but you can't run anymore, not here. Jack's vision blurred, the room spinning around him, the weight of his failure pressed down on him, threatening to crush him. He had never admitted it to anyone, not even to himself, but deep down he had always known. He had failed Sarah Dawson, and now it was staring him in the face. The reflection stepped closer, its voice a hiss diary. Admit it, Jack. Admit what you've done. Jack's knees buckled, and he fell to the floor, his breath coming in, short, sharp, gasp. He could feel the walls closing in, the mirrors warping and shifting around him. And then a hand touched his shoulder. Jack looked up to see Amara kneeling beside him, her eyes full of compassion. Taratit says, okay, Jack, you can let go. Jack swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. Sigh, I failed her. Amara nodded, her voice soft. But that doesn't mean you have to be trapped here. You can forgive yourself, you can move on. Jack closed his eyes, the weight of his guilt finally lifting. He took a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs, and when he opened his eyes, the reflection was gone. The maze had vanished, the mirrors shattered, leaving only darkness. Jack stood, his legs shaky but steady. He looked at Amara, gratitude and something deeper flickering in his eyes there. Thank you. Amara smiled softly. And just like that, she was gone, leaving Jack standing alone in the empty room. But this time, the emptiness didn't feel so overwhelming. He turned and walked back the way he came, the weight of his guilt finally behind him.